What if I told you North America's boldest growth beacon, the Toronto Metro, just flipped its lights to red, signaling a downturn that Berlin, Detroit, and Wuhan all risk next? Take a breath, refill that mug. Today's brief is not retail trivia, it is leverage. We follow cash registers, cargo docks, and help wanted boards to see how a glittering skyline became an early cycle casualty. Roll back to spring 2025. Headlines bragged about shoppers rushing for big ticket goods before U.S. tariff hikes. That surge hid real weakness, and May's official ledger finally showed the bill. Toronto store receipts slid 3% in a single month, the steepest drop among Canada's city areas. Year over year, sales eked out a 2% gain, barely half the national pace, proving the city is no longer the locomotive for Canadian demand. Why the chill? First, tariff fatigue. Reuters tallied a 1% slump in countrywide receipts as auto and grocery buyers froze. Second, a housing hangover. Record mortgage resets soaked up disposable cash and muted the high street buzz. Bloomberg notes Toronto home values now sit 7% under last summer's crest. Behind the counters, the labor chart looks harsher. Canada logs an 8% unemployment reading for the CMA, the third worst among the country's 20 largest hubs. Zoom into metal and rubber land. Ontario auto builds fell to a 30-year low this June, slicing Canada's share of North American assembly to 7%. Nationwide manufacturing sales show the same bruise, down 2% in April, with motor vehicle revenue off 8% when tariffs hit drivetrains and dashboards. Trade strategists at RBC echo the theme. The blow so far sits almost entirely inside factories and parts yards, but red ink is creeping into food and textile lines too. So Toronto's stall is local, yet eerily familiar abroad. Berlin's statisticians logged exports down 1% in May, once U.S. buyers finished their rush orders ahead of tariff day. Retail floors in Germany likewise turned south, falling 2% month over month. Front-loading is a sugar high. The crash that follows is glucose debt. U.S. analytics group Insider Intelligence reports furniture and auto outlets saw a burst early in 2025, yet growth momentum faded by Q2. History gives the roadmap. Higher jobless counts sap real retail tallies. Almost 1-for-1, a correlation Fred has tracked since the Reagan era. Inside Canada's urban grid, that link is live. Toronto's 7-month climb in the unemployment curve mirrors a steady erosion of storefront turnover. Factory slowdowns ricochet. Fewer overtime checks mean tighter grocery lists. Fewer leases on condo towers mean darker retail foyers. Canadian manufacturers and exporters call it a long-term industry challenge, aggravated by tariff grit. Yet Ottawa and Queen's Park wrangle over carve-outs, while Beijing and Brussels ink fresh supply lines. Delay is surrender when global rivals reroute cargo in weeks, not years. Some analysts argue sky-high levies could foster domestic self-reliance. Business Insider lists a surge of Buy Canadian campaigns, nudging firms to cut U.S. exposure. But credit desks know sentiment cannot offset math. Every truckload diverted or delayed wipes margin from chain store ledgers, making layoffs more likely. German automakers feel the same vice. Volkswagen's Q2 profit cratered 36%, citing U.S. tariff headwinds and shrinking output margins at home. Back in Ontario, federal countermeasures added 25% duties on non-customer vehicles, shielding some assembly lines yet raising showroom sticker tags. Supply chain advisors warn that from April, every vehicle crossing the Ambassador Bridge faces either a fee spike or a paperwork maze, dulling cross-border just-in-time rhythm. If those levies linger, consumer durables inflate. Market watchers at A Invest estimate a $1.500 cost jump merely from the steel and aluminum duties now baked into chassis bills. For an F-150, battery modules already chew $12,000 of the invoice. A fresh metal surcharge can shred the narrow profit window Ford and GM scripted. Meanwhile, Toronto households carry record variable rate mortgages. Any uptick in the BOC overnight rate slices disposal income finer than deli ham, cutting weekend mall swipes. StatCan shows retail minus autos, a rough core gauge, flat for 2 quarters, a rarity outside formal recession. Macro watchers at the conference board warn that broad consumer outlays in North America are now declining in tandem with softening sentiment, flashing an amber light for Q3 GDP. If you trade equities, the next tremor hits mall REITs, small cap auto part makers, and discretionary ETF baskets, the very tickers that Canadian and US retirement funds crowded during the boom. Window to act. Fast-track non-tariff European supply, accelerate EV material sourcing at home, and align fiscal cushions for workers in vulnerable clusters. Delay invites deeper scarring. The Nile grain levy under Rome, oil embargo lines in 73, semiconductor rationing in 2021. Toronto's slump is simply the latest stanza of that rhyme. If this rundown stirred a thought, share it with any colleague who thinks tariff skirmishes end at customs booths. Should Ottawa scrap tit-for-tat levies or double down on a new industrial charter? History rhymes. Power rebrands. Stay inquisitive.